Chapter 16 Gordon's Confusion. In the Pokemon anime and games, Pikachu is far from being a powerful Pokemon. Its popularity stems more from its cute appearance. Whether in anime or games, Pikachu is undoubtedly the cutest character, but its actual combat abilities are quite average. Especially in games, it's practically relegated to storage. Compared to those powerful and flashy legendary Pokemon, Pikachu is indeed very cute, but that's its only redeeming quality. However, the Pikachu that Schiller encountered was far more than that. It had an intelligence similar to, or even higher than, that of humans, possessed Pikachu's electric-type skills, and seemed to have some other abilities as well. It was immune to Schiller's telepathy, and the fear gas only caused it to stumble. In terms of volume, the dose of fear gas Schiller used to set the trap that day was enough to drive a small creature like Pikachu insane, but Pikachu only sneezed a few more times, and he could pick Schiller's lock and get into his bed while he was sleeping. Pikachu is so small that he couldn't even reach the doorknob by jumping. To pick the lock, he would at least have to move a chair over. No one knows how this round creature, which is shorter than a person's calf and has very short arms, managed to move a chair in the middle of the night, jump onto it, pick the lock, open the door, and then run to Schiller's side without him noticing. However, this Pikachu was clearly much more cunning than Schiller had imagined. More importantly, Schiller couldn't be as serious as he was with Batman when listening to its Deadpool-like voice. Without looking at Pikachu's face, he felt like there was someone in a black and red bodysuit muttering to himself next to him. A scene that sent chills down his spine. However, Schiller soon had little time to worry about Pikachu. Gordon sent him a text message informing him that they had solid evidence of Jonathan's crimes and were about to arrest him. Schiller's job wasn't to arrest Jonathan. What worried him more was that no one would provide him with fear gas anymore. So he had to hurry and take away Jonathan's stock. Jonathan, this future scarecrow, he's really had a lot of bad luck. Knowing that Jonathan was about to be arrested, Schiller basically took whatever amount he produced. The young scarecrow had no awareness of counter-surveillance, and he was really devastated. Who would steal his fear gas? With the ability to teleport, stealing the fear gas became even easier for Schiller. He only needed to be about 100 meters away from the chapel in the Morrison neighborhood. Then he could teleport directly into the chapel's underground area, take the gas, and leave without leaving a trace. Batman, of course, also participated in the capture operation. With his superb infiltration skills, he returned to the laboratory and discovered that Jonathan had created a fear gas spray gun. He suggested to Gordon that he should be the one to capture Jonathan. Otherwise, the gas spray gun might drive all the police officers involved in the operation and the residents of the Mawson neighborhood insane. Although Gordon didn't quite trust the man in the tights, he had his own reasons. Everyone in the Gotham Police Department is talented, except for him. They're basically all lazy bums who always arrive at the scene last when something happens, so you can't count on them for anything. The combat capabilities of this team are beyond question. A single gas spray gun would be enough to take down most of the police station. Don't expect his superiors to give him any help. Gordon has already seen through it. The current director is colluding with certain underworld forces. He doesn't want any more trouble. It's just a few dozen civilians dying. How can that delay his money-making business? Gordon felt helpless and powerless. So the only person he could rely on was Batman. While Batman is still immature, Scarecrow is clearly no better. It's a classic case of two weaklings scrambling for cover, and Batman obviously wins in the end. He subdued Jonathan with an anesthetic needle while Jonathan was conducting an experiment in the lab. Furthermore, the camera on his batsuit clearly captured how Jonathan committed the crime. Faced with such a case with irrefutable evidence, Gordon, who had little influence, was ousted. His superior took over the case and quickly opened a trial, which could be considered a decent achievement. A university professor, the mastermind behind dozens of murders? This would be a bizarre case that dominates the front page of newspapers for days in any other region, but in Gotham, while it is still a significant case, it only occupies one column on the main page of the newspaper. Seeing that Gordon and Batman's names were absent from the newspapers, and that the articles were filled with endless praise for Gordon's superior, Schiller knew that this dark city had gained another heartbroken and frustrated man. Gordon, this good cop, still has a long way to go. To Schiller's surprise, Gordon soon approached him. In the counseling room at Gotham University, Schiller poured Gordon a cup of coffee. The still relatively young detective looked exhausted, but after taking a sip of the hot coffee, his complexion improved considerably. He said, "I know my visit is somewhat presumptuous, Professor, but regarding Jonathan's case." Gordon seemed hesitant to speak, so Schiller said, "Let me guess. The trial may have gone smoothly, but things went wrong at the trial stage, right?" Gordon clenched his fists on the table and said with a grim expression, "That damn killer is a chemistry PhD. You should know what that means in Gotham. Some people don't want to sentence him to death. They want to exonerate him on the grounds that he has a mental illness and then make him work for them." Schiller, sitting opposite him, said, "Indeed, a brilliant chemistry PhD. If he could create even one new type of hallucinogenic drug, would make the person who hires him a fortune." Gordon shook his head and said, "It's far more than that. The drug they want Jonathan to develop might be even more dangerous than that. If they invent drugs, they can only make a small amount of money from addicts. But if they actually invent a virus that can put all of Gotham under their control, the wealth they could gain is beyond words," Gordon said. "Did someone leak information about the fear gas?" Schiller asked. "The gas was incredibly effective, which was why some people recognized Jonathan's power." Gordon looked at him, hesitated for a moment, and said, "I don't mean to offend, but I'd like to confirm if you've seen anyone suspicious recently. I can tell you very clearly that I have not told anyone about this, and it would not have done me any good. As a university professor, having a murderer as a colleague is already disgraceful enough. If I had any further contact with him, it would have greatly affected my career," Schiller said. "So," Gordon clasped his hands together and said, "That night, I heard you call that skinny guy Bruce. He was Bruce Wayne, right? I can't tell you anything about this. You should ask him for confirmation yourself instead of coming to me." "I know what you're worried about," Schiller said. "As Gotham City's biggest business tycoon, Bruce Wayne isn't necessarily completely uninvolved in those dirty deals. And if he finds out you're investigating this, you're going to be in big trouble. That's what you're thinking, isn't it?" Gordon said. "Jonathan said in his statement that someone had been stealing most of his fear gas. That man in the tights was the one I suspected. He was just too suspicious." Schiller remarked with some emotion that the content not found in the comics now seemed quite interesting. Gordon and Batman, these longtime partners, hadn't always trusted each other. Gordon was even quite suspicious of Batman, this eccentric vigilante. This is not surprising. No normal person would accept it at first glance. Someone wearing a black bodysuit and two-pointed ears running around Gotham in the dead of night. Such behavior is hardly that of a good person. Schiller said, "Have you ever considered that he might actually have the same suspicions about you?" Gordon sighed and said, "Actually, he has more reason to suspect me. If he really is Bruce Wayne, I know the Wayne kids have never given up on investigating the case from back then. The Wayne couple's deaths were very suspicious. I've looked through the case files, and there are too many things that don't make sense. If young Wayne is Batman, then of course he won't trust any police officer, including me." "Gotham City's police?" Gordon said with a sigh. "I know the police in this city are just for show. You can't count on them for anything." He seemed a little dejected, sighed, took a sip of coffee, and then fell silent. Schiller said, "As a rock in a quagmire, you are hard enough. You can't expect anyone to fish you out. It's better to roll around and get bigger until you occupy the whole quagmire, where there is no difference between you and an asphalt road. Is that what you think? Do you think I should continue down this path?" Gordon also seemed somewhat confused. It's no wonder he's so depressed. He risked a lot of time and effort to solve the case, and then someone stole the credit. Gordon was only trying to uphold justice, but now someone is willing to let go of the murderer who killed dozens of civilians for personal gain. This is a huge blow to Gordon. Schiller laughed and said, "Detective Gordon, it seems you need some psychological counseling. But coincidentally, I happen to be a psychologist myself, and I don't charge fees." Gordon forced a smile and said, "I've seen your resume in my file, Professor Schiller. Consider it my year-end bonus to have such a renowned psychologist like you provide me with psychotherapy. Anyway, thank you." Schiller said, "You're welcome. It's an honor to help a good Gotham cop." Gordon's smile became even more strained, and he said, as if sighing, "A good cop? Maybe." Chapter 17 Batman's Kidney Crisis. Schiller's serious psychological counseling session with Gordon ended the moment Bruce opened the door. The three men stared at each other blankly. Schiller asked, "Well, Mr. Wayne, as I said, you're already booked for your therapy session this week, aren't you? Why didn't you call ahead to ask if anyone had made an appointment?" Bruce was also a little embarrassed. He really hadn't expected Gordon to be here. He had only come to deliver an invitation to Schiller. Bruce knew that his identity with Gordon was likely exposed, but he also knew that the fact that Gordon hadn't come to him or to Wayne Manor meant that he didn't actually trust Batman. This frustrated Bruce, because he knew Gordon was indeed a good cop, But now this upright officer in the Gotham Police Department didn't trust him and even harbored some inexplicable hostility towards him. Bruce knew that Batman had to do more, had to do something truly useful to change things. Schiller said, "It seems that God also wants us to form an alliance. Since we are all here, let's have an open and honest talk. We all know what happened that night. I know that the three of us don't completely trust each other, but that's okay. We can still temporarily unite for a common goal, such as getting my colleague, Dr. Jonathan, who created the fear gas, to go to jail." Gordon knew he had nothing left to hide. If he couldn't resolve this matter and his superiors and the police chief found out that he was secretly investigating someone who wanted to hire Jonathan, he would surely be doomed. Whether it was Schiller or Bruce, Gordon could only hope that they were at least neutral and could offer him some advice, even if they couldn't help him. Gordon frowned and said, "The situation is definitely worse than you think. Victor, oh, that is, the current police chief, he was charged with selling high concentrations of tranquilizers, but he was not convicted and instead rose through the ranks. Some people speculate that Sal is behind him, but no one has any evidence. My boss, Lantelos, I have seen him going in and out of the club where the Red Ravens are, but those old cops are too cunning. No one can catch them out." Schiller sighed. He knew Gordon had given the Gotham Police Department some face. The Gotham Police Department, from top to bottom, was almost entirely made up of gangsters. Even the kindest police officers were just doing less work because they were paid by the gangsters. Schiller asked, "Do you know Harvey?" "Harvey Block." Gordon frowned and thought for a moment, then said, "You mean that fat guy in the logistics department who smokes and drinks? What's wrong with him? Do you know him?" Harvey Bullock is depicted in some Batman comics as a slovenly, smoking, and alcoholic fat man, and Gordon is not wrong in that respect. However, in most comic book settings, he is a good cop disguised as a bad cop. He seems to be in cahoots with the gangsters, but in reality, he secretly helps Gordon. In one comic, he even teamed up with Gordon to defeat the Joker without Batman's intervention. Schiller said, "You know, I've worked with the police in several cities. I heard he took classes at the police academy in Star City. A veteran policeman from the Metropolitan Police Department once told me about him. He said that Harvey wanted to be a good cop, but he had been retaliated against. As a result, he had to disguise himself with a decadent appearance and even actively colluded with gangsters to find protection for himself." "Do you think he's trustworthy?" Gordon asked. Bruce interjected, "It's not a good idea for you to fight alone in the Gotham Police Department. If you don't have any allies there, it's almost impossible for you to take down your superiors and the police chief, not to mention the gangs behind them. I think you could try contacting Harvey, but don't tell him everything. I'm sure he's also keeping an eye on this case. If he's really trustworthy, he might offer you some help behind the scenes. You two can work together, one openly and the other covertly, which can at least make things difficult for your boss." Gordon said, "I'll go ask him." Bruce said, "As for your police chief, I'll investigate him, of course, in another capacity that you know." Bruce never intended to hide it from Gordon, because he knew that getting help from a police officer in the department without revealing his identity would be almost impossible. "And gangs," Schiller said. "Whether it's the Sal you mentioned or the Red Raven gang, I'd like to take a look." Both men stared at Schiller. Gordon hesitated for a moment before saying, "Professor, I know you've traveled to many cities, but I must warn you, Gotham's gangs are different from those in other cities. They are vicious beasts, disregarding all law and morality. They are a pack of extremely ruthless jackals. Yes, that's why I'm going now. You know, if I wait 2 months, Gotham University will be holding final exams, and then I won't have that much time." Schiller glanced at Bruce and continued, "After all, many students here would rather go clubbing while it's still light out than put more effort into their studies." Bruce rubbed his nose awkwardly. Gordon looked him up and down and said, "Although I'm not much older than you, I still have to remind you that if you really want to stay that freak in the tight suit, you'd better tone down your private life. Half the beautiful women in Gotham City have slept with you. Do you think there might be a few black widows among them?" Bruce replied dismissively, "Okay, I'll be careful. Thanks for reminding me." Bruce's reputation is known throughout Gotham City. It must be admitted that even at 18, Bruce was stunningly handsome. Although he did not yet have the air of someone who had experienced the vicissitudes of life, his good looks alone were enough to capture the hearts of countless women. Gotham's entertainment newspapers published gossip about him almost every day, and the female companions in the photos of Bruce were never the same. Schiller wasn't too worried about Bruce being assassinated by the mob's mistress. He was more concerned about Bruce's kidneys. He felt that even Batman, if he kept going like this, would eventually need to drink kidney tonics. Unfortunately, as soon as Bruce returned to Wayne Manor, his old butler Alfred told him, "I must apologize for canceling your appointment tonight, because the results of your last medical checkup were really not good." Bruce paused for a moment, recalling the rather strange looks Gordon and Schiller had given him earlier that day. He coughed awkwardly and said, "Cancel all my dates this month." Afyu paused for a moment, then his eyes gradually turned strange. He said, "Young master, you invited Miss Christine to dinner 2 months ago. Are you sure you want to cancel her invitation too?" Bruce waved his hand and said, "Of course, I don't have much time to date them right now." Afyu's gaze grew even stranger. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "If there's any change in your sexual orientation, I hope you'll inform your loyal butler immediately." Bruce covered his forehead and said, "I'm going out to investigate things these next few nights." "Well then, let's not cancel Miss Christine's date. She's really sexy and charming." After Alfred left, Bruce found his phone ringing. It was Schiller calling. He answered the phone, and Schiller said, "You're dating Christine, the head of the Nightingale rugby cheerleading team?" Bruce was startled. Did Schiller really have mind-reading abilities? But he soon realized he was overthinking it. Schiller said, "She bragged to her sisters about hooking up with Little Wayne, but she disappeared 2 days after saying that. Her sisters reported it to the school, and Anna from HR asked me to contact you." "I haven't dated her yet," Bruce said. "Our date is scheduled for 2 weeks from now. You know, my schedule is pretty full." "So her disappearance has nothing to do with you? That's strange." Schiller said, "The personnel department told me that Christine knew she was beautiful, so she was very careful and never left the school unless necessary. She was about to graduate, but now she has disappeared." Bruce became somewhat wary. He said, "Could it be related to Jonathan's case? Are Jonathan and her very close?" "Of course not. How could a girl like that be close to Jonathan? She's a beautiful socialite, while Jonathan is stuck in his office all day." Schiller said, "Okay, Bruce, now you have something new to do. Find your future date, preferably before your date deadline." "But The Nightingales are Gotham University's calling card. The disappearance of their cheerleading captain is a huge blow to them. The NCAA playoffs start in 2 weeks. If you can't find him, I'll fail your course." "Hey, Professor, you can't—" "Hello? Hello?" Bruce reluctantly hung up the phone and then called the school himself. He learned that Christine was very popular in the cheerleading troupe, and many girls went to the school to ask for her. Without the troop leader, they couldn't rehearse their dances, which made the rugby team members unhappy. Just as Jonathan was arrested, the entire school was trying to quell public opinion, and everyone was too busy to help. So Schiller, the new professor, was drafted into the job. Then Batman was conscripted by Schiller. Bruce began to think. A beautiful girl had disappeared in Gotham. The outcome of this matter was almost a foregone conclusion, but Schiller's words implied that Miss Christine was a very cautious person who generally did not leave the school. She had disappeared on the premises of Gotham University. It's hard not to suspect that this is related to the Jonathan case. Whether you heard one sheep or two, it's all the same. Bruce paid no attention to Schiller's ineffective threat. When has Bruce ever cared about failing a course? Aside from attending psychology classes out of respect for Schiller, he would either be out partying or just messing around in other classes. Thinking of this, Bruce recalled something Schiller had just said. Christine had mentioned to someone that she was going to date him. Could this be related to her disappearance? Chapter 18: The Wounded Daredevil. Hell's Kitchen, New York. On the bed in Schiller's psychiatric clinic, Daredevil Matt let out a scream. Schiller removed the alcohol swab he was holding with tweezers and said, "Even though no one will come down this street, if you keep tensing up like this, I definitely won't be able to get the bullet out." He threw the cotton ball into the trash can, wiped the tweezers with an alcohol swab, and opened up the wound on Daredevil's shoulder a little, saying, "I need to cut the wound open a bit with a knife." Matt said, "You have to give me some anesthesia, or I'll definitely go into shock." "A superhero who's afraid of pain. I really don't know whether to laugh at you or admire you," Schiller said. "There aren't many people who can hurt me, and Kingpin has found a formidable opponent this time," Matt said. Schiller looked at Matt's pale face. His lips were almost bloodless. Everyone has a different tolerance for pain, and Daredevil Matt was clearly one of the more sensitive types. As Schiller said, it's hard to say whether such a person should be ridiculed or admired as a superhero. Schiller thought that superheroes also get hurt and bleed, and even the most powerful drugs cannot completely prevent pain. Perhaps it was through unbearable pain that Batman abandoned his superficial idea of revenge and found a greater goal for himself. Only a noble ideal like justice can sustain these superheroes as they lick their wounds alone on night after night. Schiller put down the tweezers and said, "You're lucky, Matt. I have some good medicine here." He took out a small white bottle and handed it to Matt. Matt touched the packaging and smelled it, saying, "Damn it, how come you have this kind of painkiller? You addict." Schiller said, "Don't be ignorant. This is not like the junk on the market. The concentration is the highest you can find. Give it back if you don't want it. This stuff is very expensive." Schiller produced the painkillers he had taken when he stole the fear gas from Jonathan. Jonathan needed painkillers when conducting experiments on his subjects, and these were all refined by himself, much better than what could be bought. Matt still ate a piece and said, "God bless me to get better soon. Then I'll turn around and punch you. Don't make it sound so natural to repay kindness with enmity. In a hellish place like Hell's Kitchen, it's perfectly normal to carry a few pills with you. It's not a crime." As the pain subsided, Matt had to admit that Schiller was right. In Hell's Kitchen, drug use was practically the most harmless vice. Schiller thought that if someone in Gotham only had a slight drug addiction, then he was as kind as an angel. Schiller watched as Matt's complexion gradually returned to normal, and while performing a simple operation on him, he asked, "How did you manage to slip up like this?" Matt pursed his lips and said, "Kingpin's men are no ordinary people. I took precautions beforehand, but those guys who call themselves ninjas can slow down my heartbeat, so I can't hear them. Oh, damn it." Schiller held the bullet he had just removed with tweezers, turned it around and said, "These ninjas you're talking about are just bored and have nothing better to do. They even carved cherry blossom patterns on the bullets." Matt looked exhausted. Schiller called out, "Pikachu, get the bandages I kept in the cabinet." Matt heard a small creature jump onto the table, looking at him with disgust. "I told you not to treat him in the bedroom. Do you think the smell of blood is nice? Hey, you unlucky guy, your bandages." Schiller caught the bandage Pikachu threw to him and wrapped it around Matt's neck. Matt said, "You'd better hurry up. I have to leave here soon." "And then die on the street outside the door?" Schiller asked. "They've got their eyes on me. Those ninjas have unique tracking skills. If they come here, none of us will escape," Matt said. He was, after all, a good person and didn't want to implicate Schiller, even though Schiller wasn't exactly a good person in his eyes either, since Schiller had saved him. Matt might have been all talk, but he didn't actually want to repay kindness with enmity. Schiller said while cleaning the blood-stained tools, "They don't need any special tracking skills. You run all the way from the next street covered in blood, and if they still haven't noticed you." Matt suddenly heard a loud whooshing sound and shouted, "Darts! Get out of the way!" He was extremely anxious because he could tell from Schiller's footsteps that he was just an untrained ordinary person and had almost no chance of survival against those ninja assassins. But soon, he heard a thud, as if the dart had hit something. Schiller was holding an umbrella, and he thought that an umbrella was indeed a powerful defensive tool, especially against small things like darts, as it could greatly reduce their impact. There was only one person on the other side because Schiller's telepathy was area of effect. Apart from Matt, he could only sense the thoughts of one person. "Miss, if you hesitate for 3 minutes before taking action, why don't we sit down and have a cup of coffee together?" Schiller said. Before the other side could answer, Schiller continued speaking to the air. "You really went easy on your old flame. I've never seen anyone shoot a bullet right into the least lethal gap between the shoulder blades. Since you're here, why don't you come out and meet her?" A cold snort came from the air opposite, and then the assassin left. Matt looked completely bewildered and said, "What? What old flame?" Schiller shook his head and said, "Didn't you notice? Since the assassin you encountered was capable of shooting you without you even noticing, why didn't she shoot you in the heart or the head? Wasn't this bullet aimed at the heart? They're worlds apart." Matt's mind went blank for a moment. He clearly hadn't realized that the assassin opposite him was actually his former classmate and ex-girlfriend, Erica. Knowing the plot, Schiller was well aware that Erica was probably torn. She still had feelings for Matt, but was hesitant about completing the mission. She wanted to show up, but didn't want to see her ex-boyfriend. So, as soon as Schiller revealed her identity, she ran away in a flash, clearly not wanting Matt to know who she was. It's true, you can never guess what a woman is thinking. Soon, Daredevil Matt fell into a deep sleep amidst pain and worry. Schiller lowered and locked the roller shutter door on the clinic's main entrance, and then closed and locked all the windows. He stood by the bed, looking at the New York City night sky. A bright shooting star streaked across the sky, and countless couples made wishes to the heavens. But it was actually Stark's mech. The people in Hell's Kitchen didn't have the leisure to make wishes on shooting stars, but Schiller took out his phone and called Stark. As soon as the call connected, Schiller said, "Does Miss Pepper know that you'd rather fly around in your mech than go back to be with her?" Then, under the watchful eyes of countless couples, the shooting star plummeted to its death. A while later, on the roof of Schiller's psychological clinic, Stark, wearing a slightly smoking Mark V Evangelion, complained to Schiller, "I really should have put you on my blacklist." Schiller lit a cigarette for him and said, "A middle-aged man, out racing in the middle of the night and driving in such a melancholic curve. It's no wonder he's having a fight with his wife." Stark also went up to the roof and sat down, taking the cigarette Schiller offered him. He said, "She's putting a lot of pressure on me. To be honest, I haven't thought it through." "Haven't decided what? Should you marry Pepper?" Stark coughed twice and said, "Marriage? Did you skip some important steps?" "Oh, right. In the eyes of a stallion like you, there is indeed an important step." "Don't say that. Pepper is different from those women." "I just don't know if you're the same as other men in her eyes," Schiller said. Before Stark could reply, Schiller continued, "But I think it's about the same. You've spent less time with her than the security chief." "Then I'll go back and fire that security guard," Stark said angrily. Clearly, he's avoiding some issues. After a while, Stark touched his cheek and said somewhat hesitantly, "You really can read minds? Would you believe me if I said I could?" "If you don't believe it yourself, don't keep asking," Schiller said. "I'd like to find a way to make me believe that mind reading exists, and then you can tell me what Pepper is really thinking," Stark said. "Iron Man is not a traditional invincible hero. He has a sensitive and sentimental heart, and an emotional mind that is inconsistent with his image as a technological genius. Therefore, he is always entangled in a mess of emotions." Stark always struggles to move forward when facing Pepper, completely unaware that this attitude actually reveals a lot. Schiller changed the subject, saying, "How's that red and blue leotard kid in New York City doing lately? I've heard you complain about him." "Oh yes, a kid in the ugliest of tights was jumping and swinging around in the air like a flea," Stark said. "Jarvis said the kid was probably underage, and I was planning to grab him and throw him home." Schiller said, "I do have a lead. Would you like to hear it? I've seen him a few times on the edge of Hell's Kitchen, but he never dared to come in. I noticed he had what looked like a high school logo on his blue pants that day, from the Queens area." "You call this a clue?" Stark scoffed. Schiller continued, "It's obvious he doesn't have the money to buy himself nice clothes, so his family situation probably isn't good. Therefore, he's definitely not from one of those ridiculously expensive private schools. He's most likely a student at Midtown High School or Forest High School. Forest High School is a boarding school. If a student were to wander around like this, he'd probably get his legs broken. Midtown High School is much more relaxed. Judging by his build, he's probably a freshman or sophomore." "A little brat," Stark concluded. "He probably made up a toy that he can show off, so he couldn't wait to come out and wander around." "So, are you planning to let him experience the wickedness of adults?" Schiller asked. "Of course, more importantly, New York City is not his playground," Stark said. Although he had just recovered, he was, after all, an adult who had experienced major events and knew that Spider-Man's reckless wandering around would eventually lead to trouble. In fact, some media outlets had already taken notice of him. Happy Lunar New Year's Eve, everyone. Updates will continue daily during the Spring Festival without interruption. A contract has been signed so you can invest with confidence. He has a 1.5 million word novel on another site that has been updated continuously for a year. But I'm a new author, so please add to your favorites, recommend, vote with monthly tickets, and give me a reward. Thank you so much to our generous monthly pass sponsor, Ming Ziang. Thank you. Chapter 19, The Novice Spider. Peter Parker was having a great time. Ever since he was bitten by the spider, he had gained unparalleled superpowers. He was no longer the weak and helpless shut-in, but had become incredibly strong and agile. For a high school student, this was the best thing ever. However, he wasn't without his worries. The doctor he had been chatting with online arranged a thorough medical checkup for his whole family, but the checkup revealed many problems. Peter was perfectly fine. He was in excellent health, and the hospital's equipment couldn't detect anything unusual about him. The problem was with his uncle and aunt, Old Parker and Aunt May. After all, they were getting old and had some health issues, but that wasn't a big deal. However, during the examination, the doctor told Peter that his uncle had a shadow on his lung, which was not good news. Anyone with a little common sense knows that the next sentence after this statement is likely either about cancer or a tumor. The doctor recommended that Ben Parker undergo a full lung examination, but this was not cheap, especially considering that a biopsy might be needed later, and the Parker family simply could not afford the surgery. Although medical expenses are reimbursed, the cost of this type of examination is not on the reimbursement list, and no insurance company will cover it. If the doctor Peter met online is still working at this hospital, then perhaps Peter could ask him for help. Even if this good hospital doesn't work out, he could go to a slightly worse hospital, which would be cheaper. The Parker family had always lived in poverty. Peter often didn't have a new piece of clothing all year round. But Peter knew that his uncle and aunt had done their best to provide him with the best life possible. After all, they earned very little, and Uncle Ben was unwilling to earn a single penny of ill-gotten gains. With his meager fixed salary, he had to support Peter's education, leaving him with absolutely no savings. Ben Parker was quite philosophical about it. He said that the shadow on the lung didn't necessarily mean cancer or a tumor. It might just be some minor inflammation that would heal on its own. He comforted Peter, saying that it might just be alarmist talk from big hospitals. But Peter was really upset. He couldn't help but feel a sense of resentment. Thompson, who always bullied him at school, probably wore a pair of sneakers that cost hundreds or thousands of dollars, while his family couldn't even afford a few $100s for a medical checkup. But Peter thought things are going to be different now. With all these superpowers, what else can he do with them if not make money? Peter was certainly very clever, and he used his quick wit to come up with the fastest way to make money: participating in underground boxing matches. Of course, playing cards at a casino might be faster, but Peter knew that his intuition was unreliable and that if it was inconsistent, he might not only fail to make money but also lose money. But underground boxing is different. His strength is enough to defeat any ordinary person, no matter how fierce and cruel they are. The absolute suppression of strength will make him invincible. Where in New York City is the underground boxing industry most thriving? Hell's Kitchen, of course. But Peter, a model student who had always studied hard, would never go near such a chaotic place. So, perhaps out of fear or caution, Peter lingered around Hell's Kitchen for several days but still didn't go in. One day, Peter learned on his way home from school that his aunt had twisted her back but had no money to buy medicine and could only rest in bed. He couldn't hold back any longer, and his pent-up frustration turned into anger. He really wanted to beat up a few people. He put on the self-made mask, which looked ridiculous, but after gaining the power of the spider, his physique became slightly more robust and he was no longer so skinny, so he looked decent. He wandered around Hell's Kitchen like a headless fly, but since no one could beat him anyway, and he had spider sense which he could use to dodge bullets, he eventually figured it out. About 2 blocks away from Mary Street in Hell's Kitchen on Beale Street, there was an underground boxing ring run by a gang. After Peter knocked out the strongest underground boxer there with one punch, he was spotted by the manager and recommended to fight at the largest underground boxing ring at the end of the street. Here, Peter gave himself a code name: Spider-Man. Everything went smoothly. Peter won one after another, and almost no boxer could withstand his flurry of punches. The power brought by the spider mutation was simply too great. In just a few days, Peter earned tens of thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, Daredevil stayed with Schiller for a few days. After all, he didn't have any superpowers, and his wounds healed at the same speed as ordinary people. Fortunately, the assassin who tried to kill him had clearly shown mercy, and the bullets did not damage any vital organs. After a few days, Matt was much better. That evening, Matt bid farewell to Schiller. He had to continue his cause of justice. Stopping because of Kingpin's assassination attempt would be exactly what he wanted. So Matt not only wouldn't stop upholding justice, but he was also determined to deliver a crushing blow to Kingpin. His target was Beale Street, where 2 nightclubs, a casino, an underground boxing ring, and an illegal auto modification shop were all Kingpin's properties. It could be said that this street was controlled by the Kingpin gang, bringing him millions of dollars in profits every year. Matt's first target was the underground boxing ring. But don't forget how his father died. These underground boxing rings have no reason to exist. They only want to make money off gambling addicts and don't care about anyone's life. Matt's father refused to fix the fight because he wanted to give his son a winning performance, causing the bookmakers to lose money, and was brutally murdered by the gang. This also led to the birth of Daredevil. Therefore, Matt would never let go of any underground boxing ring. In fact, Kingpin's underground black boxing gambling industry had been severely damaged by Matt. This is why Kingpin sent assassins to him. If Matt doesn't die, Kingpin will never be able to make money from underground boxing. Of course, Matt was a seasoned hero. He didn't just barge into the underground boxing ring. His most common method for dismantling these underground organizations was to observe for a few days, then find a drunkard who had come out of there and extract all the information he wanted from him. After that, he would arrest a few members of the management and target them. By disrupting the betting operations several times, the gamblers would find other places to go. After observing for a few days, Matt learned about the name Spider-Man from many people and that he had recently made a name for himself in the competition. Matt had also seen Spider-Man once, but only briefly. However, he knew that this kid's good days wouldn't last long. On this day, the owner of the underground boxing ring approached Peter, wanting him to throw the fight. Anyone familiar with the rules of this betting knows that with Peter's winning streak, his odds would become very low, and everyone would bet on him to win, with almost no one betting on his opponent. At this point, if Peter loses, the bookmaker only needs to pay out the money to a few people who bet on his opponent to win, while taking away the money from all those who bet on Peter to win, a huge fortune. Underground boxing rings are essentially a business where there is no fair competition. The bookmakers manipulate the odds to swindle money from gambling addicts. The underground casino owner agreed to give Peter a share of the profits, but Peter wasn't very happy about it. First, he felt that he had already earned enough money. Tens of thousands of dollars were enough for Uncle Ben to have a full set of checkups, and even if Aunt May needed major surgery on her back, that money would be enough. Besides, Peter is just a high school student after all. His mind is not mature yet. The thrill of consecutive victories is irresistible to him. For a teenager, asking him to deliberately lose to his opponent is simply impossible. Peter has finally gotten his revenge, and he is not going to do it. The owner of the underground boxing ring didn't say anything, and Peter naively thought that the other party couldn't do anything to him. After all, he had such great strength. Who among ordinary people could beat him? All of this was observed by Daredevil Matt. He had sneaked in early on by posing as a drunkard, pretending to be intoxicated and slumped in the audience. His exceptional hearing allowed him to hear every word of the conversation between the boxing ring owner and Peter backstage. Matt was also present at the competition the following day. When Peter entered the arena, there were still countless cheers from below. Peter raised his hands to salute them, ready to wait for his next defeated opponent. A strong black boxer walked up, and Peter saw a sly smile on his face, but he didn't understand what was going on. At the beginning of the fight, Peter felt it was going well. He almost knocked the other boxer away with one punch. However, the other boxer did not fight head-on but dodged and weaved, seemingly trying to stall for time. Soon, Peter sensed something was wrong. His stomach began to cramp, his legs went weak, and his vision blurred. Just as he was losing consciousness, the black boxer punched him in the cheek, causing Peter to stagger back a few steps, feeling dizzy and lightheaded. The opposing boxer pressed his advantage, and the instant Peter was hit, his spider senses went off. He felt heavy lead weights inside the boxer's gloves, and if he were hit like that, his brains might fly out. Peter bent down and barely dodged the attack, drawing boos from the audience. Spider-Man, in previous competitions, had never dodged attacks. Peter couldn't care less about anything else. He was in terrible pain and could barely breathe. The boxer opposite him threw another punch, knocking Peter to the ground. This wasn't a proper competition arena, and there were no proper referees. Even after Peter fell to the ground, the boxer's fists continued to rain down, and no one came to stop him. Peter could only clutch his head tightly, but the lead-weighted boxing gloves kept hitting him, making him feel like his internal organs were about to shift. Finally, he couldn't hold it in any longer and collapsed to the ground, vomiting with a goo. The audience below erupted in a chorus of curses. Knowing that he might lose his money, the jeers from the audience below became increasingly shrill. Peter had never heard such profanities in his life before, and they were thrown at Spider-Man. Before Peter lost consciousness, he saw a figure leap up from the stands, a cane whistling through the air, striking the boxer's neck with a whoosh. The fierce beating finally stopped, but Peter could no longer hold on and passed out. Happy Lunar New Year. It's a new month. Please vote with my monthly tickets and recommendation votes. Wishing you all the best, peace and joy. Chapter 20 Spider-Man and Daredevil. When Peter woke up again, he found himself in a cramped and dimly lit room. He saw a man in a red bodysuit with his back turned, organizing his equipment. Peter was still in pain all over, but thanks to his extraordinary self-healing ability, most of his wounds had healed. The man turned around and said, "Kid, you're lucky. They only gave you some laxatives and anesthetics. Nothing more powerful. Otherwise you wouldn't be awake now." Spider-Man's mutant abilities don't reach their peak right away. They require a series of training and stimulation. Later, Spider-Man is dozens of times stronger than Peter Parker is now, whether it's strength, speed, or healing ability. Although Peter has had his mutant abilities for some time, he has only ever dealt with ordinary people. Now that his abilities are far superior to those of ordinary people, he naturally doesn't think about how to improve them. Therefore, his physical functions had not yet reached the level where he could be completely immune to drugs. The owner of the underground boxing ring gave him a large amount of laxatives, along with some anesthetic drugs, which put him under the influence. Peter said, "I remember you. You saved me, didn't you? You're lucky to be alive, kid. And it seems you have some extraordinary abilities, otherwise you'd be dead by now." Peter was also covered in a cold sweat. You can't expect a high school student to have a strong sense of wariness towards people. The people Peter lived in were kind and friendly, and his Uncle Ben was the same way, always emphasizing positive education. Peter had never witnessed the wickedness of human nature before. He said with lingering fear, "I thought." Then he slammed his fist on the bed and said angrily, "I'm going back to teach that boss a lesson. He dared to drug me. You don't really expect there to be fair referees there, like at the World Championships, do you?" Daredevil asked. "All right. I see your injuries are almost healed. Hurry up and leave, kid. Hell's Kitchen is not a place for you." "I'm not some little kid," Peter said. "I'm Spider-Man." "You're still a long way off," Daredevil said. Peter was about to retort when a cane came to a stop beside his neck with a whoosh. The spider senses didn't react at all, or rather, they didn't have time to react. Peter broke out in a cold sweat. Daredevil's movements were so fast that even his superhuman eyesight couldn't catch them. The martial arts Matt learned from Stick weren't some amateurish skills. Although he was just an ordinary person, his stats were almost at the limit of what an ordinary person could achieve. Combined with his honed martial arts skills, he was even stronger than Spider-Man, who had awakened his spider powers. Peter, a greenhorn, swallowed hard and said, "That was a cool move, buddy. I think you used the same trick to save me." Peter made a swaying boxing gesture with his hands, and Daredevil put away his cane. He said, "If you really want to be Spider-Man, there's still a lot to learn. If you're interested, you can come find me here." Daredevil isn't exactly a saint either. In the Marvel Universe, he's a very ruthless and decisive hero. He saved Peter not only out of compassion, but also partly because of his memories of his father's death and his desire to prevent others from dying in underground boxing rings. On the other hand, he also planned to find himself an assistant. The assassination attempt that day made him realize that he couldn't be split in two by himself. He couldn't evade his enemy's pursuit while upholding justice. But if he had an assistant, things would be much easier. Spider-Man lived up to his expectations. He was very capable and talented, but also very inexperienced and knew nothing. And so, Peter started coming to Daredevil's place every few days. He realized that although he was incredibly strong, his skills were terrible, and he had very little experience in dealing with people and situations. Otherwise, why would he need to make money in the underground? With such martial arts skills, making any amount of money would be a piece of cake. Driven by a desire to improve his life through his own abilities and a young man's envy of Daredevil's cool martial arts, Peter quickly became acquainted with Daredevil and learned about what he was doing. Peter admired him greatly, but felt it was unnecessary. How much could he do by himself? He couldn't possibly kill all the criminals in Hell's Kitchen. With that kind of perseverance and willpower, if he had gone to do something else, he would have already settled down, started a family, and lived a fulfilling life. But soon, as Spider-Man and Daredevil became more and more familiar, he even spent several nights during his vacation at Daredevil's base. He saw Daredevil bandaging his wounds alone countless times, and his attitude began to waver. Daredevil is indeed just an ordinary person. He doesn't have any super healing abilities, and unfortunately, he is more sensitive to pain than the average person. Therefore, every time he is injured and bandaging his wounds alone at the base, Peter can see that he is in so much pain that he is about to faint. But the next day, he still goes out to fight criminals as usual. While Hell's Kitchen isn't as dangerous as Gotham, the chances of getting hurt while trying to fight for justice there are too high. Sometimes you get grazed by stray bullets during gang shootouts, sometimes you jump from several stories to escape being chased, and sometimes you get hurt in close combat, leaving a large bruise. Every time Spider-Man sees these wounds, he has a complicated feeling. He already considered Matt a friend, and of course he didn't want his friend to get hurt, but how could he dissuade Daredevil? Should he try to dissuade him from upholding justice? From fighting criminals? But Peter was smart. He knew that even these excruciating wounds couldn't stop Matt, so how could a few casual words possibly stop him? One day, Matt was shot in the calf by the ninja who was chasing him. Peter helped him remove the bullet. Peter had never seen such a wound before. The pungent and foul smell of blood made his brain dizzy. The torn muscle was so deep that the bone was visible. Peter's hands were trembling with pain. He wasn't the Spider-Man who later became a true hero after undergoing rigorous training. Any high school student who witnessed this scene wouldn't be much better off than him. As he helped Matt remove the bullet, a dry sound came from his throat as he said, "Why did you do this? Was it really worth it? I thought you would have asked me sooner." Daredevil leaned against the wall, shifting his position. His voice trembled slightly from the pain. He said, "I can see that although your family situation is not very good, you must have a loving elder and a fairly happy family. You've lived a very stable life since you were a child. There may be some things that aren't going well at school, but most of the time it's safe. I can see you're complaining about the lack of money, but you know what? You're already incredibly lucky." In the dimly lit room, Daredevil muttered intermittently, as if in a dream, "Actually, I'm also very lucky. I was born in Hell's Kitchen, but my father wasn't a gambler or an addict. He did his best to protect me, giving me the opportunity to leave this hellish place and go out to study. He was a great father. In order to support me and get me out of here, he chose to become an underground boxer. Yes, you should have ended up like him. He refused to throw a fight when I went to watch him fight, so he was killed by the boxing ring owners." Peter's combined psychological and physical anguish made him almost unaware that he was crying. Daredevil was in so much pain that he was becoming somewhat delirious, but he still continued to mutter, "You and I are both lucky, but there are some unlucky ones whose mothers were drinking or using drugs when they were pregnant with them. They are born with drug addictions and, in order to survive, they either work for gangs or take on more dangerous and inhumane jobs. Because life is too painful, they continue to indulge in drugs and alcohol, and their children are repeating the same lives they have. This is Hell's Kitchen. Yes, I'm lucky to have the opportunity to leave here, to receive higher education, and to hone my martial arts skills. Since I'm luckier than them, I've gained more and have greater abilities. Then what reason do I have not to do these things?" Daredevil often refers to Hell's Kitchen as "this damn place." And Peter has heard them curse those people countless times, wishing everyone in this damn place would go to hell quickly. But for the first time, he learned that Daredevil genuinely wanted to save the place. He was truly determined to pull Hell's Kitchen out of hell. Peter couldn't believe that, already in such an environment, he could still think about saving this place. It was simply impossible. But Daredevil still insisted on doing it. Peter remained silent. As he pulled the bullet out with his hand, Daredevil let out a death scream and quickly passed out, his face pale. Peter stood in the center of the room, looking at the somewhat dilapidated place. There wasn't even any anesthetic or bandages to be found, and Matt's wound could only be wrapped with strips of clothing. Peter felt a surge of anger, more intense and profound than when he complained about not having money. He felt that Matt shouldn't be in this situation. He was clearly determined, persistent, and persevering. And he's a good person. Good people should be rewarded. Why do the owners and shareholders of those underground boxing rings live so comfortably? And even the drunkards who die drunk in their seats can still have a good night's sleep. Good people like Daredevil could only endure immense pain, falling into a painful sleep in this dark and cramped room. With Peter's limited experience, he still couldn't understand these questions, and these emotions surged within him. He left Daredevil's base and ran through Hell's Kitchen in the dead of night. Using his spider-like abilities, he leaps across rooftops and traverses the New York night sky. In the distance, the neon lights of casinos and nightclubs burn all night, while these dark alleyways seem as dark as if they will never see the light of day.